This incredible story is reminiscent of the plot of a detective series. A crime occurred in a small American town. The police did not have a single lead. Everything changed after one of the detectives learned about a revolutionary technology that allows you to create a real portrait of a person based on his DNA. The police took a DNA sample of the suspect and contacted a special laboratory. As soon as the experts provided the photo, everyone was shocked by the loud denouement of this case. In this video, we will tell you what happened to Rhonda Shante. On May 13, 2016, Brown County, Texas police received a call. The caller turned out to be an elderly man who reported that his granddaughter Rhonda Shante had not returned home for 25 years. In the evening, she went for a walk, after which she stopped answering calls. The grandfather was seriously worried. The fact was that his granddaughter had developmental disorders. She could not read or write, and also had problems with speech. The girl lived with her grandfather and other relatives because she could not live independently. She also did not work due to her diagnosis, but managed to finish high school. Despite all this, Rhonda got along well with people, was good-natured, and sympathetic. Almost every evening she left the house for a walk. Grandfather and other relatives could always call her and ask if everything was okay. But on that ill-fated evening, Friday, May 13, the girl did not answer calls. After some time, grandfather got into the car and set off along the route along which Rhonda usually walked. There was no trace of her. Ultimately, the relatives decided to contact the police. Grandfather was very worried and asked for help to find her. After calling the police, the search began, and a group of volunteers joined the detectives. The news of the disappearance instantly spread throughout the area. In such a small settlement, this was a rarity. The settlement where Rhonda lived was located on the shores of the huge Brown Wood Reservoir. The population was approximately 670 people. Most of the residents knew each other very well. So many concerned people joined the search as soon as the news of her disappearance appeared. Volunteers and police combed the area for several days. On May 15, volunteers decided to check an old abandoned mansion. It was located 8 kilometers from the settlement. There was almost no entertainment for young people, so the mansion became a favorite place for teenagers, where they drank and had fun away from adults. At the scene, volunteers immediately noticed fresh tire tracks. The building was empty, so they went down to the basement, where they found Rhonda's body. The girl was lying on the steps in only a t-shirt. The police arrived at the crime scene and found the first piece of evidence, a lawnmower blade. A forensic expert determined that the girl was violated, and the blade became the murder weapon. The criminal's DNA was sent for examination, but the CODIS database did not find a match. The DNA was also checked against the search databases for relatives, but here too they were disappointed, no leads. In such cases, samples are checked not only with a database of previously convicted people, but also with any third parties. For example, there are several DNA databases for searching for relatives, determining your ancestry, and so on. But the unknown criminal who took Rhonda's life did not appear in any of them. The FBI and Texas Rangers came to the aid of the local police department. Together they identified several suspects and interrogated them using a polygraph. But not one of these leads turned out to be true. All suspects passed a polygraph successfully, and their DNA did not match. The case essentially froze. The police had literally not a single piece of evidence that could lead them to Rhonda's killer. The case stalled for 1.5 years. The next year and a half passed without progress. After this time, nothing happened that finally moved the matter forward. Detective Scott Burt, who led the case, was relaxing at home and watching a program about a new technology that used DNA to recreate an approximate portrait of a person. At the time, DNA phenotyping was in its infancy, and Scott's colleagues were skeptical of the idea. Just a few years ago, this could only be imagined in detective series, but not in real life. But the sergeant did not throw this idea aside. He decided to make inquiries first. The sergeant decided to take a risk and contacted the private Parabon laboratory. The creation of the identikit cost $4,000. After several weeks, the police received a photograph of the alleged criminal. It depicted a man of Northern European descent with light skin, blue or green eyes, and blonde hair. On November 8, 2017, the local sheriff held a press conference where he showed the photo, and the photo also appeared on the police department's website. The result was not long in coming. A few hours later, local residents reported that the man in the photo was very similar to 21-year-old Ryan Riggs. The young man lived not far from Rhonda's house. The guy knew the girl. They went to the same church together. On the day of the conference, Ryan did not return home, and his parents did not know where he was. Detectives went to his home, but the guy wasn't there. He never came home. The police were looking for him all over the area, and the parents also did not know where their son had gone. At the same time, he was at home this morning. This went on for 6 days. It looked like the guy had run away, and the detectives were only convinced of his involvement. After 6 days, something happened that no one expected. Riggs came to the church and spoke to the congregation. He confessed to what he had done and surrendered to the police. On May 13, 2016, Riggs took Rhonda for a ride in the car. He took her to a secluded place on the lake and began to pester her. Rhonda fought back, which infuriated him. Then he took him to the mansion, at which time the girl was unconscious. Riggs told detectives he knew she was mentally disabled, making her an easy target for him. The young man said that God told him to confess so that he could earn forgiveness. After checking old medical records, it turned out that during his high school years, Riggs was in a psychiatric hospital with a diagnosis of depression. Doctors quickly released him, considering him not dangerous to society. What was happening was a shock not only for the residents of the small settlement, but also for the police. The sheriff said Riggs was not even considered a suspect. The detectives simply didn't know about him. He added that without the image created thanks to DNA phenotyping, this case would never have been solved. If it weren't for the latest technology, the culprit might not have been found. The trial began in 2018. The defense offered a deal to the police: if Riggs fully admits his guilt, his death penalty will be revoked. Rhonda's relatives agreed, and in February 2019, Riggs was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. Apparently, Riggs does have some mental problems, but he committed this crime with full understanding of what was happening. As for his recognition in the church, people's opinions were divided. Some believe that religion pushed him to do this. Others are sure that his flight on the day the photo was published and confession 6 days later indicates that the young man was just afraid of justice. The state of Texas has the death penalty, and Riggs would certainly have received this sentence for a house crime. His confession is the only thing that allowed him to live, albeit within prison walls. As for DNA phenotyping, this is definitely a very promising technology. What seems like science fiction has already helped catch several criminals, and these are just the first steps of technology in the world of forensics. However, this technique has its critics who doubt the effectiveness of drawing up portraits of people based on DNA. For now, such a photo cannot be used in court, but this may change in the future. The case of Rhonda Shante clearly shows us that DNA phenotyping can provide hope for solving even the most obscure cases.